It's a pleasure to be here on the Worship Summit today. First of all, I want to give kudos to Paul and Tess for putting this together. I think this is a great idea. I have been tuning in and on and off throughout the day today. It is jam-packed, lots of great information. This is really a great service, and I want to thank everyone who has joined throughout the day and who is staying online to listen to me talk now. I really appreciate it. First, let me tell you a little bit about who we are and what I do here at Videoguys.com. Videoguys is a value-added reseller of live production and streaming technology. Don't worry, I am not here to sell you anything today. My purpose today is to share some of the experiences from our customers in the house of worship space to help you avoid some of the same issues and pitfalls that they've run into in the past, and to really help you identify the volunteer resources that you have available so that when you're deciding how to stream, what gear to get, and what resources are available to use that gear, you can make the right decisions right from the beginning. When you're streaming in a house of worship, obviously the most important thing is to share your message with your audience, whether it's community programs, community outreach, sending a sermon to the sick or the elderly who can't make it into the pews. These are all some great reasons that we hear that churches are getting started in sharing the message online. There are lots of great CDNs out there to do it, and we've dealt with really large congregations as well as some very small congregations, and even churches who just want to put some messages up on YouTube in order to help build their community and build their participation in the community. Usually when we get a phone call, these phone calls all start with the same few questions. What equipment do I need? Who is available to use that equipment? And what can they use? How do I train them? How do I get them up to speed? Obviously, one of the first questions we ask in reply is what kind of budget or limitations are you working with? And that's usually answered with a moan, just as if you were shopping for a new car. Well, I can't give you a budget until I know what the features are. So one of the things that we've done is put together a basic recommended list that we find is a great way to get started. And that's typically with a 3-camera shoot, or what we like to call a 3+1 with a bonus camera. Now, this is not to say that every house of worship needs to start with 3 cameras or nothing. You can start with whatever equipment is available or in your budget today, and you can grow as those needs expand. The more focus you have on the path that you're going to in the future, the wiser the investment that you can make now. In our typical multi-camera setup, we recommend camera 1 is typically mounted in the rear of the building. This is obviously the most important camera in a house of worship. This is going to allow you to give your congregation who's watching online the same point of view as your audience who are there in the pews. Camera 2 could be a separate camera that's not centered to the podium, but focused on either a speaker or a guest. If you have a 1-camera setup, obviously you can take that 1 camera and move it to the area of focus where you need it to be. But in a 2-camera setup, now all of a sudden you can add a little bit more production quality to your message as it goes out over the stream. And then camera 3 is on the congregation itself. Part of becoming an active participant in the services is to feel like you are in that room. When the people who cannot make it into your building, the sick or the elderly, see the reactions to the sermon with the other people in the room, they can relate and they can get that same community feeling that they get when they are there physically in the building. And then, of course, the +1 or the bonus camera, which we think really adds a nice touch to a live stream production, is to have a roaming camera that is available to take additional perspectives throughout the Mass. In our Catholic Church, if you're doing a sermon on a particular reading and there is a stained glass window or statues in the church related to that reading, these are all great production elements that you can add interest to your live production and stream. Here's a little bit of a workflow diagram that talks exactly what we're mentioning here. Camera 1, camera 2 towards the special guests, camera 3, in this case, we're actually taking camera 3, which is that bonus camera towards the choir, maybe on the other side of the church, and then that bonus cam can be placed to either get the congregation or to roam around as necessary. Obviously, this 3-camera setup is not going to fit into every house of worship environment. New Tech has some great use cases on their website. New Tech makes a live production box called the TriCaster, and they put together an entire NDI workflow system with Trinity Baptist Oasis House, which is a very full-featured production system that has a lot more than just those 3 cameras we mentioned. They're actually using 4 cameras on an everyday shoot, actually 5, 2 PTZ cameras and 3 handheld cameras. They have tons of resources with personnel. They have production resources to work the TriCaster system themselves, and they have the PTZ cameras adding complementary views. We know not every house of worship has this personnel in place, and that's why we're going to segue in just a moment to talk about taking advantage of volunteer resources that you may have in your own building. Here is a separate workflow diagram from Sling Studio. Sling Studio also made some live production systems, but you'll see in this video that some of the cameras are being replaced by iPhones. That's right. New Tech has this capability now, Sling Studio has this capability, and a lot of live production systems are all adding the capability to send a video feed from a mobile device directly to the production itself. What does that mean for you in the house of worship market? What better way is there to engage your youth program and your youth ministries into your service than to tell them that they can take out that device that they all use every single moment of every single day and now become an active participant in sharing your message. So this is a great feature to definitely keep in mind. So now that brings us to my message today, which is who is using your gear. Let's identify who is actually going to be helping you with the live stream. Are you the Trinity Oasis Church where you have a house full of professional employees? Or do you have the budget and the funds to outsource to bring in a production company to share your services? If you do, that's excellent. That's great. There are some really great live production systems that will let you put together a worship stream that can add to your donation coffers and to your community outreach. So if you can get professional camera operators, a professional production team, these people are all going to be well-trained, reliable, because they're being paid to be there. The con, if any, is going to be the high cost of the production. So we know not everyone has that budget. So now the next best thing is to reach out to your congregation and to look for technically knowledgeable volunteers. This is the person who a lot of times will end up on the other side of my phone line. When you have someone who is willing to roll up their sleeves and help you with the live production and stream, this is a knowledgeable person who is going to spec out a system that they're comfortable with. We hope that you have the relationship with that person where they're also going to take on the responsibility of helping to set up your system and to train other volunteers on how to use the system. Obviously, the availability of this resource is going to have some significant impacts on the equipment that you choose. If you have a technical volunteer who is constantly available and is willing to put in a lot of times and a lot of help, that person will be able to train others and help expand your production capabilities. However, if your technical person is involved in a lot of other personal projects on their own, who has a full-time job, but really wants to help out of the kindness of their heart, but have limited hours to give, they may make other decisions on gear that they know they can set up quickly and let others use very easily. The con in this scenario is when you're relying on this technical volunteer, you are putting all of your eggs in one basket. If John's not available, if John gets sick, who else can step up into that place? That brings us to the non-technical volunteers. We hope that any good congregation is made up of the people who help make up that community. I know in my own church, there's always plenty of people who are willing to pitch in and help. The problem is not all of them know how. And when you start getting into technical equipment like this, that knowing how becomes a major factor. So what tools are you going to put in place to make it easy for them? If you can't make it easy for them, what equipment can you use to make your stream still be able to go out live? It might be as simple as getting a system that's going to support iPhone video. Because let's face it, even the older people in the congregation are learning how to use the iPhones and iPads just as well as the younger kids now. So that might be a great way. And one of the things that I really like to remind all of the houses of worship and even any production environment of the people I talk to, part of the battle is just committing to getting the message out there. The people that you're trying to reach are going to be entertained and wowed by production value. And we can bring that to them over time. But part of it is just committing to get started today. So by identifying the volunteer resources and personnel that you have available will help make that easy to help get started. I can tell you we do a lot of our own live productions in-house here. And when we first started versus where we are today, it's come a long way. If you follow the streams that Paul and Tess put out on a weekly basis, and you look at some of the production elements of where they are now versus where they were then, it's amazing how when you commit to doing it on a week-by-week basis, it grows. And as it grows, and as the production gets better, you know what's going to happen? Your volunteers are going to become more and more motivated to pitch in even more. They're going to get jazzed in the equipment that they're using. That's why we'll help you find something that they can be successful with. It's not saying you can't grow into more professional equipment at any point in the future, but sometimes if it's too tough to use, it's not the right product. You want to be able to use something that will be successful. And then, of course, the number one resource in any house of worship that I talk to are the youth programs, or if you're affiliated to a parochial school where you can get the youth and the young people to come in and use it. You know what the difference is when my child picks up my laptop and they start pounding away at it? They have no concept that they're playing around on a $2,000 laptop. They have no concern that they're going to break that equipment, because all they're trying to do is make it work for what it was designed for. When you watch a young person sit down in front of a live production system and they take the T-bar and start scrolling that thing up and down, It's very different of an attitude when you sit at the machine and you say, let me see what this does. A young person has that curiosity. They don't have the fear. They don't worry about making everything go black. That's your production director's problem. They worry about how can I make it look better. And their motivation is taking whatever equipment you give them and making that equipment stand on its head. And that's really what they do best. So if you do have students, you have young people that you can bring in to help you facilitate your live stream, by all means, don't hesitate. It is ding, 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 winner, winner for everyone around. Because now you're also giving them life skills where this mind-sucking thing that they're clicking away on now becomes a strength and a skill that they can bring with them as they grow older and go into the employment marketplace. The con of using young people is providing the proper guidance and leadership to them. You still want someone who's able to train them on the equipment that they're using. You want someone who has the monitoring and troubleshooting capability, because when they walk in and they decide they're going to unplug A, B, and C and plug it into D, E, and F, and things don't work, you need someone responsible for putting that back into A, B, and C. So if there's any con, the con can be sometimes that they can get reckless. Again, you take the strength and you add it to the con, and you just got to weigh that out. What you cannot teach, though, is the passion. And when you have the passion from the people using the equipment, that will come across in your messaging as well. The second thing I want to talk about is how all of this identifying of your resources in human manpower and volunteers plays into your equipment considerations. The first piece of equipment, and probably one of your larger investments, is going to be the production system itself. How many people are you going to have available to operate the equipment? Will you have cameramen? Will you have producers? Will those producers be working in a group with other producers? If John's not available, is Matthew available to step in? What level of training is needed? Is there going to be a youth program where you need guidance and leadership? And how is the equipment going to be used? Obviously, one of the best ways to get a return on investment is to find as many possible uses for the equipment that you're about to invest in. It might start with broadcasting Sunday services, but then you'll find that that equipment is also being used to broadcast community events. How do we use it to broadcast the sporting events that happen on the fields behind the church? These are all things that can help add and bring additional revenue in to justify the next purchase for the upgrade for even more equipment. One of the interesting win success stories that we've had here was a ministry, the Faith Ministry, down in Mexico. It's a mission trip where they were celebrating their 25th anniversary celebration. One of the coolest things that we ever did was they purchased a Sling Studio kit, which was a 2-camera setup. We packed it all in a backpack, shipped it down to their technology leader in Mexico. This woman called me up, having never done anything in live streaming, and within 15 minutes, she was up and broadcasting. We completed the test. I spoke to her 2 days later, and she was live, broadcasting this 25th anniversary celebration across the world from their Mexican mission trip. It was phenomenal. It goes to show you that if you have that motivation and you have a volunteer who's going to say, I'm going to do this, without hesitation and without fear, they can get it done. Some of the other equipment considerations that do play into the volunteer and human resources available are the cameras. If you have a large bank of technical volunteers where you can have someone walking around your congregation with a handheld camcorder, that's great. But if not, we have these PTZ cameras, which are robotic cameras that can be mounted throughout your building to get the multi-camera setup that we discussed in our workflow earlier. And what's great is a lot of the new production systems, like PTZOptics and Wirecast, all have this camera control built into it. So whether you're using Wirecast, PTZOptics I mentioned is actually one of the makers of the cameras, and Paul does a great job with them. But the Wirecast software, the new TriCaster systems, even the rolling video switches are doing more and more to integrate PTZ camera control. That means if you have one volunteer behind the production box, they can control these cameras and move them quickly throughout the room. I hope you don't mind, but I actually brought a short little video clip on a tutorial that we did with one of our publishing partners in Streaming Media Magazine, where we show how the Wirecast software and the Wirecast Gear turnkey system can actually control the PTZ cameras so that you can minimize the volunteer resources available and the human beings needed to operate these productions. Let's air that video pretty quickly.
PTZ cameras are ideal for churches. Churches often have to rely on volunteers to help produce their live streams. PTZ cameras integrated with Wirecast allow volunteers to simply click a picture of where they want the cameras to go. This intuitive setup has been designed in response to numerous end-user requests and reduces the learning curve for new users dramatically. Now, churches and business organizations alike can easily connect their next live event with the world without the need for multiple camera operators. One of the top suppliers to U.S. churches is PTZOptics. Their range of zoom and fixed focal length remote cameras perform reliably and are simple to set up and operate. It also helps that they make some of the most affordable cameras on the market. Telestream's Wirecast software and Wirecast Gear turnkey systems are also used in churches across the country. With integrated PTZ camera control, you can utilize the NDI functionality of the PTZOptics cameras to control all of their operations. Connect each of the PTZOptics cameras to your network with networking cables. Assign a static IP address to each camera so that they can all be found in the same range. You'll then be able to locate each of the cameras and add them as sources. Now you can control each camera individually directly inside of the software.
The Wirecast software can control the PTZ cameras right from within the interface, as does new TriCaster and pretty much any live production system that you're throwing at it. This is one of the key features that we are seeing added more and more. And I got to tell you, that feature is being driven by the house of worship market because human resources are at such a premium. I always am going to have limited volunteers available to help me get the live production up off the ground. So if I can take these cameras throughout the congregation and switch them back and forth and control the pan, tilt, and zoom, now all of a sudden I could put together a really nice broadcast without a lot of work. I'm not going to take up too much more time. I do want to tell you that one of the last considerations in putting all of this together is obviously on where to purchase the equipment. Of course, I would like you to purchase everything from Videoguys.com, but the fact of the matter is that's not always the best option. If you don't have a technical volunteer that is available to help you purchase the correct equipment and to help you set up that equipment and train your people to use, then really one of your best options may be dealing with a local system integrator in your area. It used to be that in order to get a system integrator to roll a truck out to you for an install, we were looking at a $100,000 system with multiple cameras all over the place. That's not the case. We have system integrators that we deal with on a one-to-one basis all over the country that work consistently in projects of all sizes. So if you don't have that manpower, these people can help you come in. And then, of course, you can call us and we can help you as well.